It was supposed to be a routine court appearance. Another hearing. Another quiet step in a long legal process. But on this day, something was different. When Sean Diddy Combs stepped into the federal courthouse in New York, he didn't know he was walking into the moment everything would end. Not later, not months from now, today. The cameras outside caught his arrival. Suit pressed, glasses on, jaw tight. But inside, past the security checkpoint, past the buzzing cameras and court officers, the air felt heavier. Federal prosecutors were already seated. Marshals stood closer than usual. And the judge, Judge Arun Subramanian, had a tone in his opening remarks that made everyone shift forward in their seats. Because Diddy wasn't just here to discuss a case. He was here to hear his fate. People who knew him say there was a moment, just a flicker, when he realized something was off. Maybe it was the unusual number of marshals. Maybe it was the way the prosecutors avoided eye contact. Maybe it was the stack of sealed documents resting on the judge's bench. Whatever it was, Diddy sensed it. His lawyers leaned in, whispered, asked questions. He nodded, but the nod didn't look confident. It looked nervous. Judge Subramanian took a deep breath, lifted the first page, and began. The courtroom fell silent. The judge spoke plainly, directly, the way he always does. But today, the meaning behind his words landed harder. Mr. Combs, the court has reviewed your behavior while in federal custody. You were given explicit, non-negotiable instructions not to contact any alleged victims, witnesses, or individuals connected to this case. He paused, looked up. You violated that order. A murmur rolled through the courtroom. Diddy blinked slowly. His lawyers froze, and federal prosecutors sat stone-faced, waiting for what they knew was coming. The judge continued, reading out detailed accounts of unauthorized communications, phone calls made through third parties, messages sent from inside the facility, attempts to relay information to individuals. Investigators had specifically barred him from contacting. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't accidental. It was a direct violation of a federal order. And in the world of pretrial detention, that is the one line you cannot cross. As the judge spoke, Diddy leaned back. His eyes drifted downward. His breathing changed, shallow, rhythmic, almost like he was bracing himself for a punch. To some people in the room, he looked stunned. To others, he looked defeated. To the marshals, he looked ready. Because they'd seen this before. They'd seen the moment when someone realizes that freedom, even the little they still had, is about to disappear. People expected consequences, maybe tighter monitoring, maybe a stern warning, maybe loss of privileges. But that's not what happened. Judge Subramanian set the papers down, folded his hands, and spoke with finality. This court has no confidence in your ability to follow federal orders. Your violation is serious, knowing, and deliberate. The courtroom held its breath. Accordingly, the court is revoking all pre-sentence allowances and privileges. You are remanded to federal custody for the remainder of these proceedings. Everything stopped. Diddy's lawyers immediately objected. They argued for reconsideration, asked for an emergency sidebar, insisted the circumstances were misunderstood. But once the judge makes a finding of willful violation, the path forward is narrow, nearly non-existent. The judge shook his head. Your client has demonstrated disregard for this court's authority. The ruling stands. The prosecutors didn't smile. They didn't gloat. They simply acknowledged the order and sat still, waiting for the next steps. Because once a remand is issued, everything changes fast. 2 U.S. Marshals stepped forward, calm, professional, no rush. They approached Diddy's chair and asked him quietly to stand. He didn't move at first, not frozen, just processing. For a man who had controlled rooms, controlled narratives, controlled his world for decades, this was the first time he had no control at all. His lawyer placed a hand on his shoulder, whispered something. Diddy inhaled deeply, and finally rose to his feet. The marshal's cuffs were already unlatched. There was no spectacle, no aggression, no raised voices, just the quiet click of metal closing around his wrists. The courtroom shifted, some people leaning in, others looking away. A few gasps cut through the silence, quickly shushed by court officers. Diddy looked straight ahead, not at the public gallery, not at the prosecutors, not even at the judge, just forward, as if that was the only direction left. They escorted him through the side door, the door no one wants to exit through, the door that leads downstairs to holding, to processing, to the transport bay that feeds into federal detention. Outside, news outlets were reporting routine updates. Inside, the story had already changed. Diddy was now remanded, meaning no more legal meetings without strict supervision, no phone access beyond monitored pre-approved calls, no private communication, no special arrangements, and most importantly, no pathway back to comfort, influence, or privilege until sentencing. The walk from courtroom to holding isn't long, maybe 60 seconds. But people who've taken it say it feels endless. Every step echoes, every sound is sharp, every thought is loud. For Diddy, this was the moment the shield cracked. The persona, the empire, the idea that power could bend rules. The marshals guided him down the concrete steps. The heavy door closed behind them. And for the first time in decades, Sean Diddy Combs was no longer in control of his narrative. The government was. In the hours that followed, quiet conversations swirled through the courthouse. Some said they'd never seen a remand executed so decisively. Others said the judge had been signaling this outcome for weeks. Prosecutors appeared unsurprised, as if they'd prepared for this exact moment. But among court staff, attorneys and observers, one reaction was nearly universal. This felt like a turning point. Not the end of the story, but the moment the direction became irreversible. Once someone is remanded for violating judicial orders, judges rarely loosen restrictions later. Appeals exist in theory, but success rates are low. Federal judges protect their authority fiercely. When you defy an order, especially in a high-profile case, the consequences are swift and severe. By evening, Diddy was in full federal custody, processed, logged, restricted, calls monitored, movements controlled, access limited, and the rumor mill began. Some insiders speculated the prosecution might use the violation to strengthen their sentencing arguments. Others believed additional charges could follow. But the most sobering thought came from a former federal attorney who spoke off record. Judges don't hand out second chances for violations like this. This changes everything. And just like that, a man once surrounded by security, staff, private jets, mansions, and impenetrable influence, was now alone in a cell, replaying every decision that led to the moment when the marshal's hand rested on his arm and the cuffs closed. This was the day the story shifted. The day the courtroom fell silent. The day power stopped being enough. What happens next will unfold slowly, through filings, hearings, and the cold mechanics of the federal system. But this moment, this single decisive moment, is the one people inside the courthouse say they'll never forget. Because it was the day Diddy walked in expecting a hearing, and walked out in handcuffs,